Okay, I want to show you what I'm doing on the border of this quilt. This is the quilt with the Lotto blocks. It has teapots and teacups on it. When I planned out the border, first thing I did was measure it, and I measure it from the end of the inner borders on both sides. So I measured to that point, and realized the measurement was easily divided by 7. So I have this 7-inch circle template, and so I divided it into increments of 7 from one end of the circle to the other, and I have some tape across here so that I've got it at the halfway mark. And I used my there it is. I used a water-soluble pen, and I marked that, and then I went through and then I marked the center of these. My plan is I will be stitching around this, or stitching on this line, and then I'm going to go a 1/4 inch away from that. Now I don't have a circle ruler that's any bigger than this one, so I'm going to have to use this one and just kind of turn it as I need it to get that 1/4 inch outline. My next smallest one is a 6, so it's too small actually to go inside either, so I'm kind of stuck there. But the plan is I'm going to go ahead and put feathers in here, so I'm going to go ahead and draw these out. Now I don't normally draw all my feathers out and then quilt them unless it's something that I feel I can't freehand in easily. So but I'm going to do this for you so you can see it. I did film myself doing this over a plastic sheet, but there was a lot of glare on it, so you couldn't see it very well. So I'm just going to do a feather like this, and that's just going to fill that entire circle. And then I'll do I'm going to kind of guesstimate what is a 1/4 inch on this right here. So then we'll have that 1/4 inch outline, and it'll go over to the next circle, and that just needs to go to there. Now in the corner I have another half circle. Let's see if we can adjust so that you can see that better. So I have another circle right here. I just kind of lined up this as the center point, and it goes up to this point here, so I lined those up with the piecing here with this 45-degree angle, and then drew around that. So now I want to go another 1/4 inch around that, so we have that. Now and then this will actually follow through and go in like that, and then this one will come out here and go around. So this will take some maneuvering with my tools to get this to look the way I want it, but it can be done. So in the middle of this, I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be doing the feather, so it'll come up like this. It's just going to have more feathers in it because it is a bigger circle. So like on the one over here I have 3 feathers going up, this one's going to have 4, and then just keep coming around. So that's another way you can do a corner. You don't necessarily have to square it off and put something in a square. You can just continue that around here. Now my question is, what am I going to do up in these areas here? And especially where 2 of the circles come together. So like in this area here, what am I going to do here? Well, I thought about putting feathers in there too, but I think that might be a little overpowering. I think that's not exactly really what I want. I could do curved cross hatching, which is another option. Just keep using my circle template, or I have a curved ruler, And I have this curved ruler also that I could also use for that. And this is kind of marked for curved cross hatching. This is a 6-inch one, so it's not quite the same, but actually that would be good to use if I wanted to put this, instead of doing my line outside this circle, I could do it inside with this ruler. So that's a possibility too. But I don't know. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do out here. See, this curve is a little bit off. I don't know. I'm not sure what I want to do. I could also do just some straight lines, and let me see. And I apologize, I forgot to turn off the filters on my fish tanks again. Though I mentioned in a comment, when somebody commented that it was bothering them, that I don't hear it anymore because I'm so used to it. Actually, I kind of like this, so I may do this. Just give me a couple minutes here and I'll go turn those off so we won't have that background noise. I'm fighting that, and then it's been really hot. Fall has not hit here yet. It's been in the 90s, and it's just, the air conditioner's on all the time. So there, what do you think about that? I kind of like that. How about that look? I think that's what I'm going to go with. That's going to take a lot of work. It's certainly not a simple design, but I like it. So I think I'm going to go for that. So I'm going to get the machine ready for quilting and see what we can do with this. Okay, I'm starting on the right side of this border, and I'm quilting in the inner circle, the one that's closest to the green border, and I'm using my 7-inch circle template, and I'm just adjusting that as I go in order to stay on the line that I drew. Now normally if I've got everything worked out and I've got all of my registration marks in the right place, I don't normally draw the lines to follow with my ruler, because I use the ruler, I follow the ruler. But in this case, the ruler is the exact size of the circle that I want, and since the hopping foot quilt's a 1/4 of an inch away from the ruler, I really needed to draw those lines so that I could get that circle in the right place. So you can see here on this view how I'm adjusting the ruler just a little bit at a time in order to keep the quilting on the line that I drew. So it takes a little care to do that. You have to kind of slow down and watch where your ruler is and where the needle is going, and that way you can keep the quilting on that line that you drew right where you want it. Now I'm quilting in the opposite direction, so I've gotten all the way to one end of the border, and now I'm coming back to the starting point, and I'm quilting the outer circle now. And for this, all I need to do is to place the ruler right so it lines up right with the line that I had just quilted previously, and then that will give me the 1/4 inch outline that I wanted for those circles. And here I'm going to quilt the circles in the corners. I saved those for last so I could just kind of keep a good flow going from one side of the border to the other. And I'm just going to adjust the ruler to place it right along the line I just quilted, and now I can quilt that outer circle. So I've got that in, and now I'm ready to quilt the feathers within the circles. So I'm going to cut the threads and get started here. And I'm going to start with the corner since I'm already here. And in this circle, I have the feathers drawn in one half of that circle. And so I'm going to go ahead and quilt those. Now, normally when I quilt in feathers like that, that's just to give me an idea of how the design is going to look. I don't always follow right on top of those lines, and I'm not doing that here, but I am coming pretty close. So it all depends on if I've got those feathers drawn in the way I quilt as opposed to the way I draw, because I don't always draw the same way that I quilt. So but this one, it came pretty close. Now on this side there aren't any drawn lines to follow, so I just freehand that in. And in places I found this was a little bit hard to do because the thread blended so well with that fabric. And when I was picking out the thread, I actually thought I had a thread that was darker enough than the background fabric that it would show up better than what it does. But it actually kind of just, once I started quilting, those stitches just kind of blended right in with the fabric. So it's really not a problem. My eyes adjusted to it pretty well, and there's enough side light coming in that I could see where I was quilting. But when I first started it was a little bit difficult to see. To avoid that problem, you can use a darker thread. As I said, it doesn't have to be a stark contrast, but just enough contrast so that you can see it a little bit easier. And the thread that I am using, I'm actually using two different threads. I've got a different thread in the bobbin than I do in the top thread, which I don't normally do. They're two different brands, excuse me, but the colors match really well, and that's just because I didn't have enough on one spool to do both the bobbin and the top thread, so I wanted to be a little bit more consistent on the top, so I'm using the spool that had the most thread on it for the top thread, and then the other thread I'm using for my bobbin. And when excuse me again, the quilt in the thread in the needle is a YLI, and the color is ecru, and in the bobbin I'm using signature, and I can't remember what the color was that I'm using in there, but it's very, they're very close in color to the point where you just really don't even notice that there's a difference. So that's one tip that you can use if you need to, if you don't have enough thread to use it in your needle and your bobbin, use a different spool of thread in your bobbin, and that'll get you through until you can get a new order of thread in. So that's what I'm doing. Now on this one, you can see I'm quilting from right to left this time, and I'm just filling in the feathers in these circles. Normally I always quilt from right to left, but this time it was just easier for some reason to do left to right. I really don't know why. Anyway, I'm going to do the piano keys in the outer border here. Now in the corner, instead of boxing off that corner, I have those lines radiating out, and I don't remember if I mentioned that before or not, but that's what I chose to do. And at this section they're all perpendicular to the border, but once I get to that circle that's in the corner, I started radiating those lines out, and I used the corner of the inner border, the outer portion of it, as kind of a guide as to where I wanted to pivot my ruler to get those lines going. And I did draw all of those lines in, so that made it easier when I got to this point. So because I wanted them to be an equal spacing, especially at the outer portion of them, I wanted them to be about 1/2 of an inch wide on the outer edge of that border. So I used water soluble pen and a ruler, and I marked all of those. And those lines are marked all the way around the border because I had a specific point where I wanted those lines to meet, where the two circles come together and there's that little crevice. I wanted a line of stitching to go from that crevice to the outer border. I wanted those all to meet. So the spacing, even though a 1/2 inch when you go across the quilt should be, you should wind up equally across the quilt, it doesn't always work that way. And so I had a couple of places where I needed to either put the quilting a little bit closer together or a little bit further apart, just in order to get all of those stitching lines that go into the crevice. Like right here is where I'm quilting one. I had to fudge a little bit one way or the other. So I have the spacing out where it's just, just like a 1/16 of an inch here and a 1/16 of an inch there in order to get those lines in the right place. And so it's not noticeable by eye. You would really have to know they are there and look for them, purposely look for them, in order to see where there might be a little bit more space between two lines or a little bit less space between two lines. So overall, you're not going to notice that. You're only going to notice it if you're looking for it, and then you're going to have to look really hard. You're probably going to have a tape measure out, and you're going to have to measure between each line to see it. So, and unless you're putting that quilt in a quilt show to be judged, you're not going to notice it. So it's one good thing about quilting. You can do things like that. Now, here's where I'm doing that radiating lines, and you can see the bottom part of my ruler. A lot of times it hits that point in the corner where that green border is, and that's where that's the registration mark for my ruler when I drew those lines to help radiate them out. So that's one thing you can do, is just locate a point that you want to use as your registration mark, and then radiate your lines out if you want to do a design like this. So now I'm back to do them all perpendicular. Okay, here you can see what I have quilted so far, and I think it's looking really well. Now the batting I'm using, this is another 80-20 batting instead of the 60-40, because no, this is a 60-40 batting. Or is it? Yes, this is a 60-40 batting. Had to think about it. It is a 60-40 batting, so it gives enough relief that you can see that quilting pretty well. So even though the thread blends in, the batting has enough loft that you can see the quilting well. And I normally don't like to quilt in busy borders because it's a lot of work and you don't always see it, but you can see it in this print because it's more of a tone on tone. It's not a busy print, so you can see feathers here. But I was pretty happy with the way this turned out. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and click the notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.